Is the red pill movement dying? Some people have been talking about it, and I found an interesting video from about a year ago. Still very relevant, with Chris Williamson interviewing Destiny, right? Destiny has kind of, at least in my news feed, kind of made his way through the red pill movement. And then I started watching some of his other debates, and he's a very interesting guy because I think he's kind of in the middle of a lot of issues, right? So he has a lot of people agreeing with him, but also the same people would disagree with him on some other aspects of like literally the same topics. That's why I like watching him, actually, because and I do have to say, unlike many other debaters, he does seem to really, really put a lot of pride in researching his stuff. I'm not saying he's always right. I don't think he's always right, but definitely the way he looks at things are very interesting. So Chris Williamson, I don't really watch. Honestly, this is one of the first times I've watched his video, and I have to say that he has very little knowledge about this subject, but I found this video very interesting because there are some things that are wrong with the red pill movement. As a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons I started my channel, because I think there are so many things in this manosphere, if you will, that I disagree with, and I can bring something different. Like, Andrew Tate obviously had a lead at first, and then almost kind of killed the entire movement. I would say Myron and Brian from whatever podcast, they've led this movement to not the best of the places, right? And so it is not really that sort of crazy to say that this movement may not survive with these leaders. Now, I disagree. I think the red pill movement, you can call it whatever you want. You can kind of look at it different ways, but what's happening with dating right now, and not just in Western countries. I live in Thailand. By the way, I'm live streaming straight from Bangkok, Thailand, where I live now, and I moved away as a passport bro. Things are changing, and I think there will be only I think the red pill movement actually will go mainstream rather than being this kind of a weird niche now. But let's look at the video, and we can judge for ourselves. All right, let's start.
Do you think the red pill's dying? That's something that both of us have spent a little bit of time orbiting in one form or another, either you debating it or me getting abused by it. What do you think's happening with the red pill at the moment?
Yeah, I think most stuff has probably a 2 to 4 year shelf life for internet content, and I think it kind of came and it kind of went. Andrew Tate and the pre-trial or pre-indictment imprisonment probably hurt a bit because it took away a lot of the publicity. I think that.
Yeah, so this is exactly right off the bat where I agree with Destiny, right? Andrew Tate was essentially kind of by default the leader of the movement. And I hate that, by the way. I mean, I don't like the guy. I think there's a lot of stuff that he says is completely unacceptable. And some of his concepts and just the way when he lives his life, it doesn't seem like a guy who's going to get a wife and get married, right? But at the same time, there's a lot of things to agree with Andrew Tate, only within the dating theme, I would suggest. So, but obviously, them being exposed for doing all of these things, and they may not get convicted, obviously, for this, but just the fact that there's just a lot of these details that I'm not okay with, and I think a lot of people are not okay with, are coming out, makes all of us look bad, right? And it's very unfortunate. But he is right. I don't necessarily agree that everything on the internet has a shelf life of 2 to 4 years. There are some topics that will always be, like, for example, I know one of the YouTubers, and she is a decluttering specialist, right? This is what people who like organizing their lives in their houses. That will always be there. This is not a trend. This is something that people do need in their lives, right? So, or people talking about mental health issues. That's not a trend. This is not 2 to 4 years. There's tons of it. If anything, like I said, red pill movement is going to be there, probably stronger than ever. There will be different takes on it. There will be different probably leaders of it with time. But I don't think it's a trend. But let's go on.
The nature of the conversations for the red pill stuff, I think, was really bad. I think the content strategy from a lot of the red pillars, I think, was very subpar.
How so?
For me, the way that I've stayed fresh and relevant for 15 years of content creation is because I'm always finding new stuff to talk about or a new angle to kind of hit something from, or I'm kind of moving on with contemporary events. I feel like for red pill stuff, I feel like I could have written the script for those shows after being on 2 of them, to where it's okay, guys, today we're going to talk about, does body count matter? Do guys value you for the amount of money that you make? Do women fuck over men in divorce? are men lonely because they're simps? It was like the same topics for like
Okay, so it's interesting because he is right. Because the red pill movement is about sort of a certain set of values that clashes with what's going with the reality of dating, with what feminism is, with what the modern women stand for, and it's not a news-based type of a theme. And yes, there are a lot of, and there's also two differences, right? Two different things. One is the content strategy of the most popular red pill movement influencers, right? I don't think most people have content strategy. It is something that only, like, if you've been on YouTube for many, many years, you start creating, because it does start to matter whether or not you survive. But people who are starting out for the first time with a YouTube channel, which I think a lot of these guys were in the beginning, don't necessarily have it. And honestly, just as somebody, so I've been a professional YouTuber for 7 years. This is my second channel. My first channel has about 170,000 subscribers, and I lived off of it for many, many years. So I can tell you, and somebody has a lot of other content creator friends, somebody who talks to YouTube coaches and have taken actually quite a few master classes. There is no such thing as sort of a content strategy anymore, because the algorithms of, specifically YouTube and TikTok and others are just it's kind of like a drunken 5-year-old. There's just no more strategy of like, okay, well, how can we make sure that creators who put out good content get more views and create an audience, and that audience sticks with them? Like, that used to be YouTube, and you kind of knew that, hey, if you're producing good content and if you have a following, then you would survive. Now, YouTube kind of ruined the word subscribe, even though that's their whole concept, right? Because subscribing to a YouTuber doesn't mean shit anymore. Right? They've completely ruined that term. And so there's no such thing as a content strategy anymore. However, I do understand what he says is that, well, it's the same thing over and over and over again. Well, yes, it is, because of two things. One is, it's a concept that's not evolving and growing all the time, right? It's kind of here. Here are the things that you need to watch out for. Most importantly, the reason it's called a red pill is that, hey, guys, stop being simps. Look what's happening to you. Things are not the same as they were 10 years ago, and these are the things to look out for. It's not like women are creating newer ways how to fuck men over. No, they're pretty standard, and they're pretty successful with it. So that's not moving anywhere. So therefore, the resistance, which is the red pill movement, is not moving anywhere, either. Now, I think there are different angles under which you can talk about the red pill movement, and I think we're still in the very early stages, because the majority of Western men, definitely men in America, are still very much simps. When you talk to men in America, or when they come here in Thailand, which is even more interesting, they still don't understand what's happening to them. They still don't understand that, it's kind of a very, very, very different atmosphere, and women are very different than from what they remember. And some of them don't even remember. Some of them don't even know what a traditional woman is, and why you should only date traditional women if you're a strong, sort of good man who wants to be the head of a household. So that is something that, like, I just literally just did a video about what a traditional woman is, because a lot of people are asking me that question, and I'm like, dude, we used to call them women before. Now we have to say traditional, because, like, basically not this shitty type of Western, modern feminist women. That's all it really is. But I do have a video if you're interested in what a typical traditional woman is, because that term definitely varies from one person to another, for sure. So he's right and wrong about it at the same time. And I'm not going to lie, it is not always easy to put up content that's like, well, how else can I wake these simps are? Because the first 10 different ways how I tried didn't really work, right? So it's interesting, but let's keep watching.
Over a year, such that it became like a meme, where when I would show up on a show, some of my fans would do like bingo cards of like, okay, well, when is the body count question coming up?
Hypergamy.
Or, are women hypergamous or not? And then it's like, and it's funny because like the questioning would always, there's a fallacy called all roads lead to Rome, I think. If there's not, there should be one. Where basically, literally, no matter how somebody answers a question, it always goes back to what you want it to. So
is it just me, or the table is shaking a lot? Notice that. I don't know. It's bothering me a little bit.
I might say to a girl,
Right.
have you ever dated a guy? You say you don't care about guys at all. Have you ever dated a guy that's 5'5"? And the girl might be like, no, I haven't. Because you hate short guys, you won't. And she's like, oh, no. Okay, have you ever dated a guy that's 5'5"? Yes, I have. Oh, when? When I was in high school, I actually dated a guy that's 5'5". Really? Are you together anymore with him? Well, no. Oh, you dumped him because he was a short king, right? Like, yeah. Or it's like, are you dating a guy that's 5'5"? He's like, yeah, I am now. And it's like, oh, really? Is he rich? No, he's not that rich. Does he have a huge dick? Yeah, his dick is pretty big. Oh, hypergamous. You just want the pool boy. You're probably gonna, find a rich guy and still fuck. Like, there's always Andrew Tate actually is the perfect example of the all road.
So he's interesting, right? That a lot of, and like I agree, this is why I don't like the other Andrew Wilson, right? Because he does not allow for some women to be good women, or for some women to be partially bad, right, in terms of dating, and still partially having some good positive qualities, right? You're a Western woman, you're bad. Now, in my case, I've decided I don't want to deal with that at all, right? I was like, if you're a Western woman, you're most likely trouble. And if you're half trouble, I still don't want the trouble. So let me get the fuck out of America, where I can come to a country like Thailand, Southeast Asia, South America. I just recently visited Africa. Not that it was any better than America there, which was surprising. And I already put out a video about that. But, it's on the other hand, of course, I can argue that like a little bit of poison in your cup of tea is still makes it something that you shouldn't be drinking. That's my philosophy. But generally speaking, like Andrew Wilson and a lot of times Myron, they just do not allow women to be even a little bit good, right? It's just basically even. At the same time, the type of women they bring in, right? OnlyFans models, Instagram models, girls who are promoting something, strippers and stuff like that. These are not real women, right? And, the problem is even not with women that are that good looking that they can have all this social media presence, right? The problem is actually with women who are average looking and think that they're, deserve celebrity attention. So I agree with him in some ways that, some of these guys are just say if you're a girl and you're Western and that's it, right? Even like, for example, with tattoos, I don't date women with tattoos. I would say you should not date women with tattoos if you're looking for a good girl. However, in my personal life, I do allow for some exceptions, right? Like if it's a tiny little tattoo that can be, removed easily, and you got it when she was a rebellious teenager at 17. Okay, listen, give this another chance, right? Just see what else is there, because you don't want to miss out on a good girl because of one thing. Yes, tattoos usually, spell a lot of trouble, and most of the time you would be right. But, give it a little bit of wiggle room, right? Or like the other day, like not the other day, like I know a girl who works across the street, and she's worked there for almost 2 years since I moved here. And her tattoos says her father's name. Normally, tattoos represent that the girl most likely never had a father, or her father is a simp, right? She doesn't respect or admire him at all, and that's why she got all these tattoos. Well, this is interesting. But this girl, I would give her a chance and say, hey, listen, like, you know what I mean? I still hate the tattoo itself, but it is a removable tattoo. So I agree with the Destiny here is that like we do need to use logic with every girl rather than just saying, okay, well, every one of those girls is bad, so let's find or even make up things that make her bad. But his next point is actually much more tough on the red pill community.
Which lead to Rome, okay? When Andrew Tate had the pretrial imprisonment, there were never going to be charges because it was all a scam. It was just a sham kangaroo court. Now that there are charges, if there wouldn't have been charges and he would have been released with no charges, no indictment, it was because obviously it was a scam, right? But now that there are charges, well, obviously because it's a scam, of course they're going to make up charges. So now they're going to go to court, and if they go to court and they get, if they go to court and they beat the charges, it's because it was bullshit the whole time. But if they go to court and they're convicted, well, it's because it's bullshit the whole time. They were going to make it up always. So literally, no matter what happens, it's always because of your particular prediction of the world. So you end up with these prediction models that will predict every single event, which means they don't actually predict anything, but it allows you to escape the cognitive dissonance of your predictive model not being correct. So you don't have to worry if you've got a good view, like a good blueprint of the world, because literally, no matter what happens, you've always got a way to make sense of it in the future.
Well, this is
So about the Andrew Tate trial, right? So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets convicted, but I'm also really big on let's not convict men just because a girl said something, right? Let's go through court and let's see the evidence and let's see if the person gets convicted or not. So I don't like the fact that Destiny's, a lot of people are doing this, but that's fine. Now, originally, don't forget, Andrew Tate was held without charges an extended period of time, and it wasn't even a house arrest; it was in prison, right? I'm generally against that as somebody who believes in justice, that, you can only arrest somebody if you have some charges or some evidence that is going to turn into charges within, 72 hours or so. But holding somebody, in prison for, I think it was like 6 or 9 months without charging him, that does sound like I'm against that. That's not justice, no matter what, right? If if you don't have evidence yet, I know sometimes it takes a while to gather evidence. Don't arrest the guy. And and if he slips away, then hope that your country has the agreement and treaties with other countries, and he gets arrested there and gets extradited to your country, right? So I just to be clear on that. But yes, Andrew Tate, essentially, with his philosophy and what he was accused of, and even the way he handles it, right? It is a big fucking problem for a red pill community. I'm kind of like, when people say, "Oh, you're part of a red pill community," oh, Andrew Tate, and I'm like, fuck, it's kind of like a lot of conservatives, right? Like, they don't like to be conservatives anymore because like they may not be supporting Trump and a lot of things that they believe that he's doing that's not good for conservative movement, and they hate being associated with Donald Trump because they're Republicans or conservatives, right? Like Mitt Romney probably would be one of them. So I understand, and I feel the same way as well. At the same time, Andrew Tate was the only one who kind of, in the beginning, survived all the cancellations, all of the accounts being canceled and demonetization and stuff like that, and put the red pill movement sort of on a map, right? So there's something to be said about that. But I wish we had a different leader,
Is why that 4-step process of when was the last time someone publicly admitted that they were wrong? When was the last time they surprised you? If someone came out and had a discussion about this and was like, do you know what it is? I actually think that a lot of the time I do actually see girls in relationships with guys that hypergamously I wouldn't predict that they were in a relationship with. That guy just seems to have game. It's not really about the fact that he's tall or fit or rich or has status or any of these things. He just seems to be like a really nice guy, and she wants to have a family, and he ends up being, you go, I wasn't expecting that. That was something that would have surprised me. You think, okay, well, that shows an evolution of talking points, but I don't know how many times. And this is why, I'm still fascinated.
All right. So a lot of times this guy, like I said, I'm not a big fan of him. He just kind of says something and doesn't really say much, but yes, I do hate the fact that the talking points becomes a Bible, right? So for me, again, I'm going to go back to tattoos, right? For me, when I say, hey, you should not date women with tattoos, that means, is that you are unlikely to find a good submissive wife who respects a strong male figure, but there is a small chance, right? So like I gave you an example of a tattoo. Like there are also girls who put tattoos on their scars, right? It's better to have a tattoo than an ugly scar. Like I understand that does not necessarily mean like this is something their fathers might have approved, right? So I do believe that when we in Red Pill movement tell guys, hey, it's a lot of times is like, hey, listen, here's a list of things how women fuck us over nowadays, and you're not even aware of it. Go through that list and see, right? Check. It doesn't mean like if she has a tattoo, it doesn't mean that she's not going to respect you, right? Or nose ring, and at least nose rings are removable, right? If she doesn't say thank you on the first day when you pay for dinner, big yellow flag. But check if she was too nervous or was trying to front a little bit and appear normal, right? So, but let's check, because most guys just don't fucking check, right? They're simps. They're just happy to have a girl and be in the presence of a girl, and then they do whatever the girl wants, right? We're not saying like all these women are bad. At least I'm not. I'm just saying you need to look into every single one of these yellow or red flags and see if it really is something. Is there something there that's a deal breaker or not? So it's actually much more nuanced that they make it appear. But I do agree, and I understand why they're saying how everything is like, well, tattoos bad, nose rings bad, and there's absolutely no wiggle room. There should be a wiggle room, and it really should be up to each guy. Like, for example, visually, I just think tattoos are masculine, and I'm just not attracted to women with tattoos. But some dudes go like, meh, whatever. I don't like them, but I don't hate them. And if those tattoos don't represent what they normally represent, well, I can see how somebody can be happy with that girl, right? So I just want to point that out because it is true.
They did evolutionary psychology and intersexual and intersexual dynamics and all of that stuff. It's still very interesting to me. But the whole like lambasting women for having standards that are too high, that never was something that really crossed my world of content creation. But even now it's like, okay, so what else is happening? How can here's an interesting angle. Here's a much more interesting angle for me for something.
Man, he sure really knows how to talk and say absolutely nothing. I'm not familiar with this guy. I don't know if like dating is his thing. I'm assuming it's some sort of a men's channel, but my goodness, the guys. Sometimes I don't like. Maybe it's these guys used to be interesting, or maybe they're interesting on another topic. But I feel like here, every time he says something, it's almost nothing. But okay, let's see what he has to say next.
It's contemporary and new. This skew of young girls to the left and this skew of young guys to the right. Given the fact that most people date within their political affiliation, and because politics are becoming more important to each individual person now, that's interesting. That's like a new, okay, so what do we do? Where's this coming from? And what does this mean? 30% of Democrat parents are afraid that their son or daughter would marry a Republican. That's interesting. So what about like parental pressure and how does that play into it? That's interesting. You can keep talking about the same thing, but do it with a different angle on it. Continuing to just hammer away on the same points. I don't know. It's just fair play if you have that.
Yeah, so I already addressed that. But here's the thing. You do have to hammer away the same points because most of American men are simps. And they need to like there's so many times you have to like bang your head against the wall until you fucking figure it out, right? And I do have to say that's why there's a lot of us, right? The red pill movement influencers that are tackling in a different way, because a lot of these guys are just so fucking far gone into being simps that it takes a while to give them the same idea. Sometimes you have to tell somebody the same thing over and over and over again until they have some sort of a life experience where that finally makes sense, right? Because like, for example, I have tons of married friends who've been married for a while, so they cannot even fathom this. Like they cannot wrap their brains around that, a girl can come up to you, ask you for your number, you would invite her over for a date, she'll be very excited, and she just would not show up, right? Which happens all the time. Like they cannot even wrap their brains around it. So because they're kind of stuck in frozen in time from when women were normal, right? So but these guys, like when I tell them about these stories, but one day it happened to their like friend, or their wife or girlfriend says, well, that happened to my male friend, and they're like, oh shit, this is not just Alex saying it, it sounds like it's happening in the real world. Or they become single and that happens to them. So yes, you do have to repeat the same thing over and over and over again. But I also agree with them that tackling it from different angles is also is obviously a good way to make a point finally to unsimp a lot of American men. Now, as far as the political angle. Now, obviously, this video was shot a year ago, even though I think it's quite relevant still. But we now know that a lot of men voted for Trump, even though they might have not liked Trump per se, but because he was because they didn't want to vote for Kamala Harris, who was very pro-feminism and anti-men's rights. And my very first video on this channel was specifically about that. That they said, fuck that. At least that guy, wants alimony gone, right? Or child support, laws to be changed. So yeah, I would rather vote for someone who at least recognizes me as a first-class citizen, where Kamala Harris does not. And a lot of men decided to vote for Trump. So we do know that there is a big divide. And of course, feminism is very much progressive in a liberal value. So more and more women, especially being raised by single mothers or simp fathers, go that direction. So this is not a very, very new thing that's going on. But, for me, again, like I was wondering, like, well, so like I'm an independent, right? So it's even tougher. Do I only date independents? Do I date would I date a girl who voted for Kamala Harris or a girl who voted for Trump? And I realized, you know what? The girls that I would date would not be political at all. They would not be like, if they voted, they would vote however their husbands or boyfriends would vote, or fathers sometimes, right? They would not really have their own political opinions and be following politics. And, so, and I've realized that's pretty much the girls that I've dated before. And I would also, again, recommend that you date a girl who is not trying to keep up with current news and have an opinion and have a party affiliation. I'd rather have her develop much more important skills as a girlfriend and a future wife, right? Being kind, being submissive, being supportive, being feminine, all those things that most Western women are not anymore. So, as far as a political affiliation, I feel like that's an easy answer, right? Just try to find a girl who is either apolitical altogether or has very soft views. Like, well, my parents, they're Republicans, so I kind of flow that direction, but I don't really have a real opinion about it. So that's the type of a girl, again, I would date, and I would recommend pretty much anybody, Republican or Democrat, date, if you're a strong male figure, right?
Degree of patience, maybe, to be able to just have the same conversation 1,000 times, but I don't have that in my toolbox.
The description is boring.
Another thing that I wanted to mention is that, I don't agree that in, showcasing all these OnlyFans and Instagram models on this podcast, like Fresh and Fit and whatever, and Pearly Things, is a good example of what a modern woman is, because they are quite extreme. And, just yesterday I did a review on this channel called Women on Men, where they come up to regular girls on the street and ask for their opinions. Those are but this guy is such a simp. He doesn't ever follow up those questions and tries to dig in, because most women usually lie. So it is very, this is where I think, everybody misses Kevin Samuels, right? He talked to regular girls, but he also kind of, show them what the reality is. And we need something like that. Because, showcasing these girls. Now, the good part about it is that, as you always all turn on a different clip of Fresh and Fit or whatever podcast, they always have different women. Even though I don't think they're the correct kind to showcase an average American girl, at least you can see that a lot of women, almost all of them, you're right, no matter who is on the screen, they all have very much the same opinions, which is important to understand, because a lot of these simps, a lot of American men think like, well, you guys are just talking about that girl or that group of women. Well, the women that I am attracted to are not going to be like that, right? So this actually does prove a very, very good point, that this is a cultural thing, right? Women now culturally are taught not respect men. Women culturally believe that they owed money pretty much right away on a first date. They culturally believe that they are the prize and not the men, even though they're complaining there are no good men anymore, because we're all in Thailand and Philippines, or at home playing, computer games. So whatever American men who just don't want to have anything to do with women anymore do. So I think there's some good parts of that as well.
The descriptive part, because it's the same thing over and over again. And then the prescriptive part is boring, because for a lot of these movements, people don't actually give you good advice to kind of navigate it sometimes, unless you can become a top 1%er. Instead, what they try to prescribe is like a world that doesn't exist anymore. Like, this is no good because women have birth control, because women are, earning money and blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, well, that's not changing. So you have to give advice for the world that exists now, not.
So it's very interesting, right? Because he's, once again, with Destiny, I think he's partially right and partially wrong, but he brings up really good points to talk about, right? Unlike that other guy who's just, I don't know. I know his show, but he so far contributed pretty much nothing. But the point that Destiny, makes us
tell guys you have to become a top 1%er. You need to earn so.
Yes, there are two sides to the red pill movement, and I think a lot of it, people think it's a dating advice, right? But dating advice is kind of a twofold, right? Dating advice is what to do and also what not to do. And the red pill movement, and it's literally right there in the name, is about what not to do. Because a lot of men don't know that they're not supposed to do things that they were taught to do or worked 5, 10, 20 years ago. So it is very important to recognize that the red pill movement is just a lot of caution, a lot of, hey, realize that we live in a different world. And Destiny says, well, it's not changing. Well, actually, it has changed. That's the whole point. And this is why, again, red pill, right, is a reference from the Matrix, and the world within the world, right, a simulated world. This is the whole point, and I think this is where Destiny is wrong, is that a lot of these simps, the reason men simp in America is because they still think that they live in a world 10, 20, 30 years ago. And I'm talking about dating world. And the dating world is actually really, really changed. It's almost the opposite of what they know. It used to be a lot of gentlemanly things that you used to do as a gentleman, are just now simping. And it's actually damaging not only your dating chances, but just men as a whole. Even holding a door open, which I still do here in Thailand, because when I hold the door open for a woman, I pretty much every time I get a thank you, and usually and a why, because I put some masculine energy forward, and it wasn't looked at like, oh, of course I'm entitled to my door being open. Yeah, because he's a man, he's a second-class citizen, he's supposed to do that. So I'm not even going to bother saying thank you, right? And the masculine energy is just no longer recognized and appreciated. And that's why a lot of women either say, well, I don't need my door being held, or a lot of times go through and never even say thank you. I'll acknowledge the man who opened the door. That's life in America nowadays. Here, it's still very different, right? A girl would absolutely acknowledge that a man opened the door and be very appreciative, and will give you some feminine energy back. That's why I still enjoy being a gentleman. But in the matrix of living in, thinking that you still live in this world, but you're already in an Americanized Western world, and you open a door and you go like, wait, what just happened? Why am I all of a sudden invisible? I did something nice to a girl I don't even know. I could have slammed that door shut after myself or whatever, walk in myself first and let her handle it. So this is very important to actually make these men, the simps in America, recognize that they are in a matrix. The world has changed. And I don't know if it's going to change again, but this is certainly that we should try to change it, right? We should try to change it back, where women are no longer acting entitled because men allowed that, right? If you're opening a door to a girl and she walks up and doesn't say thank you, well, you either call her out on that immediately, or you just don't open the door again. And then hopefully the world would change. But so I do think it's changed. Now, we've also discussed AI and robotics. I believe that women have only another 5 or 10 years until men see, because let me just back up a little bit. Most Western men, most Western women have lost a lot of their values, right? Because they're not submissive, they're not agreeable anymore, they're not feminine, not a lot of things. But the only thing that they do have to offer is sex for men. And that's why a lot of men still obviously have to simp to get the prize. And also a lot of men decide to just pay for it, but nevertheless, right? The emotional sort of benefits that you get out of a relation of a marriage are also going away, right? Women have become not only much more abusive, but they bring very little to the table nowadays in a relationship, just as far as emotions are concerned. So what's going to happen, and it's already started to happen, AI will replace the emotional part of having a girlfriend, right? A guy can literally generate a girl of whatever looks he wants. And she and obviously this is just going to be communication by voice, or well, even voice is pretty good, but that's not there yet right now, by typing. And an average AI girl not only is going to be much prettier than an average normal girl, she is already a better companion to that man, except for sex, right? I mean, even if you tell ChatGPT, like, act as my girlfriend, ChatGPT is already going to be kinder, more feminine, and more empathetic to you than an average Western girl. So we're already there, and that's what's going to be changing. These services are going to pop up everywhere, where you can just pay $20 a month, and you're going to be a quite amazing feminine companion that you cannot touch, but it's going to already replace a lot of guys' lives where they don't get it from regular women. And there are more and more men who are staying home, not going out, getting off the dating apps. But the next step, of course, is robotics, where, and that's going to take a while, but sooner or later, it's coming, right? Where these are going to be sex robots, essentially. And then after that, that's it, game's over. Like, women will be, as far as romantic and sexual partners, will be completely useless to men. And I think this is where I think women will start realizing that, in hopefully changing back into, so I think the pendulum does swing into the extremes, and right now it's in the extreme. I think it will come back. So I think Destiny is wrong. I think things will change. At least that's what we all should work towards, right? If we all continue being simps, then nothing's going to change. Things are only actually going to get worse. But if men up, and a lot of us have, and leave this bullshit dating scene, whether do things like me, like go to another country. And by the way, if you want to know how to do it, go to the millionmenproject.com. I kind of outline every single step of the way that you need to, here's the link in the bottom here in yellow, that you need to do in order to become a password bro. I hate the name, but nevertheless. So, all right, we're almost done.
Much fucking money that the traditional girls or whatever will go back to liking you. It's never advice geared towards, well, how do you navigate the modern world where women don't need men as much, where women are looking for different things in relationships? How do you navigate that? It's just like, we need to go back to the days of old, and everything is messed up now because of feminism and complaining and blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you.
Okay, so that's pretty much it here. But, I think this is, I think it's a bit of a cop out for Destiny, just kind of saying like, well, you cannot blame this and this and this. Well, yes, you can, because that's what happened. Now, I disagree with the majority of the red pill influencers where they only blame women. At the end of the day, if you got to blame someone, a group of people, I blame men, right? Because the reason women behave this way is because men allowed that. When a girl when a girl goes to you on a dating app, when a girl stands you up on a date, it's because there's a bunch of other simps who are ready to, accept one word reply in 3 days and continue simping and continue being there for her, right? It's when a girl shows up 20, 30 minutes later, men are still sitting there and waiting for them, right? And when a woman doesn't show up at all, this guy still will be like, oh, what happened? Well, maybe we can reschedule and all of that stuff, right? It's because there is no punishment for a woman to act this certain way. As a matter of fact, she loses nothing, right? She loses absolutely nothing until that starts to change, and it has to start to change. Then women will literally not be able to do that, right? Because, well, if you stop replying to a guy you like, well, you're going to lose the guy you like, if you don't show up to a date, that's it, you're done. Like today, so I do this once in a while, right? I matched with a girl. Well, I love black women, and there are very few here. So I did get matched with a girl on OkCupid, I think, right? And we had a conversation. I don't even know what I call a conversation. I would say, how are you doing? She would say, good. I'd be like, all right, well, are you here permanently, or you're just visiting, right? Because I know she's a foreigner. I live here. Okay. Like, I'm already feeling that this one word replies, not really asking anything about me, not trying to get to know me. And I was like, all right, I'll just try one more, because again, like, I'm not that red pill. I will give a girl a chance. She could be sick and just trying to keep the conversation going, at least giving you some replies. She could be on her period, whatever, right? So I finally just asked, I said, well, where are you from? And then it took her pretty much the entire day. So I asked that yesterday afternoon. Now it's today's afternoon. And she replies and she says, Africa, right? Okay. So I'm done, right? And I'm, because first of all, like, such a lazy reply, right? One word reply, didn't ask me where I'm from, right? And took a day for her, right? So see, most guys would continue going. And I think I've already gone further than I should have probably. But again, I feel like it's part of my job. So I do want to I understand a little bit more. But if it was just me if I didn't have a channel, after the second reply, I would be gone, right? And there are ways also. So first of all, this is what men need to do, right? After you see that this girl's putting no effort whatsoever, tell her to go fuck herself, right? Just, I mean, don't tell her that, but I'm just basically saying, get rid of her. That's it, right? Sooner or later, she will run out of men, good men who are interested. Now, I also sometimes struggle to either just unmatch, and then, but I also feel, that would be the easiest and best thing to do. Just unmatch, get rid of her, move on, right? She's trash. But I also feel a sense of like community and doing the right thing for the rest of the men, right? So, and then I would actually give her a chance to understand what she did wrong. So like I replied, I said, hey, listen, I don't think, one lazy one-word reply per day works for me. I don't think this is going anywhere. So I'm going to move on, but I wish you the best of luck, right? So a polite message to show her that I'm, because I don't want her to be like, well, yeah, see, he was an asshole in the first place, so I don't want him, right? I want her to see like, hey, this guy was actually kind and he didn't just disappear. He gave me a, kind of a feedback, but not in a nasty way. And maybe next time, enough guys do that, right? Enough guys basically say, well, I don't want to talk to you anymore, right? And once she starts getting older and run out of those guys, she'll be like, well, what are they all saying? Oh, I shouldn't be this, a bitch. Like I should put an effort into conversation, right? So that's my hope. I know I'm maybe a little bit naive because there's like one of me and 1,000 other guys who didn't do that, right? That's the reason she's doing it. But at some point, men need to uniformly have some self-respect and act in a certain way where this behavior is not acceptable. And women who act this way end up lonely and single on antidepressants. Now, you see that a lot nowadays, right? You see women in their 40s posting. I mean, my feed is full of these women or reaction videos to these women where they're saying, well, fuck, I'm in my 40s. I fucked around and I thought, this or that. And, I made a bunch of, bad decisions, rejected a bunch of guys, and now I'm lonely. Nobody wants me, right? But I also see women in their 40s and 50s saying, yeah, these pathetic men in their 40s and 50s, they don't know what the real woman is. They're just losers, they're just going after these 20-year-olds because they're in midlife crisis. And I'm like, wow. Like, how sad, right? And I'm 48, and honestly, I know I live in Southeast Asia, but even when I was in Africa, and even when I was in America, most women I dated are in their 20s because, I'm a pretty active guy. I'm still in shape, full of life, and I don't have any children. I like to travel and do all kinds of, I love to dance the night away and stuff like that. So I end up being matched with, women without emotional baggage, women who are not bitter about life yet, right? And this is where it's going, right? These women only realize that they haven't done themselves any favors, closer to when they pretty much have no value on the dating market. And when they're in their 40s, they wouldn't date guys like me in their 40s as well. But again, we're dating girls in their 20s. So a girl in their 40s, and I had a few friends who are females in their 40s, and I said, listen, your best bet is a man in his late 50s and early 60s. Like, ew, that's disgusting, man. I said, well, see, that's how we feel about you. Ew, they're for a girl in their 40s. That's disgusting. So this war of sexes is going to go on until men up, find some self-respect, and start doing what I did today and every day, essentially, right? I see the girls putting no effort in the conversation or taking too long to reply, then move on. Now, I also experience here all the time. Well, I don't want to show my personal messages here, but I've also experienced when a woman actually wants you, right? Your communication thread with her, right? The window is full of emojis and pictures and good morning wishes and good night wishes and have you eaten yet? That's a big thing here in Southeast Asia, right? Have you eaten yet? So it is. All of us know what it's like to talk to a girl who is actually interested. So when you guys come across, a lot of you simps in America come across a girl who's obviously not interested, like the girl today that I came across, and you continue going, you hurting yourself and everybody else. And at some point, we need to stop that. So, all right, it's time for me to have some delicious Thai food. Which I'm actually a little bit hungry, but I live stream every day and I'm doing reaction videos mostly. So this is fun. Of course, feel free to participate. Other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow.